Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek, and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks here at the U. Thanks to all the alumni and friends who have made time to join us live today. We have a great topic coming up. Most of us want to do good and have a positive impact on our colleagues and society, and also do well and reach our own definition of financial and career success. Can you do both? What steps can you take to incorporate an intentional approach to business ethics and corporate responsibility as part of a successful career path? Today's webinar, Doing Good and Doing Well, Business Ethics and Career Success, will address all this and more. And so we're very excited to have our speaker with us today. Today's webinar is part of a free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. We will be running monthly webinars from now until May, and actually are already planning the series for next year as well. The webinar is being recorded and will be viewable afterwards at minnesotaalumni.org/webinars. And if you're on Twitter right now, tweet at us with the hashtag UMNwebinar. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter as well, or perhaps take the conversation online to Twitter after or during the presentation. We have some great upcoming webinars coming up on the 18th. One of our faculty members is talking about organic food and farming. And then on March 3rd, Eric Moore, the archivist of the U of M archives, will be talking about some of the most interesting aspects of their collection there. Definitely tune into those. And then if you're into career webinars as well, we have some great ones coming up in April on negotiating your salary and also communication styles. And you can find all those at minnesotaalumni.org/webinars. Lastly, since you are a virtual audience, I thought you'd also be interested in a virtual event coming up on February 10th, where alumni are actually needed to help give some career advice to current students. It's a virtual speed networking event where alumni will share career knowledge and advice with students in a series of brief 9-minute text-based chats. And if you're interested in that, the URL for that event is at the bottom of the slide. Just a few housekeeping options on how to best utilize the audio. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default, and if you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your speakers, this can be caused often by having multiple software applications open, which can use up your computer's bandwidth and affect performance. So feel free to close any unnecessary applications or switch from a wireless connection to a hardwired connection. We do welcome questions anytime today, and you can submit them via the questions pane on your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be monitoring them along the way. So please submit your questions, ideas, etc. This is going to be a fun conversation and presentation, and we do want to hear from you. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's webinar speaker, Rand Park, a senior lecturer in the Department of Strategic Management and Entrepreneurship at the Carlson School of Management here at the University of Minnesota. He currently teaches corporate responsibility and business ethics courses in both the undergraduate and MBA programs at the Carlson School of Management. Prior to his appointment at Carlson, he was the Vice President of Development for the Minnesota Private College Council. Rand has also held a variety of professional positions over the past 20 years, including law, public finance, higher education administration, and fundraising and development. He has a JD from Hamline University School of Law and a BA and MA from the University of Georgia, and he's currently completing his PhD in the College of Education and Human Development here at the University of Minnesota. And actually, last but not least, he was recognized last year as Faculty Member of the Year during the Carlson School's Business Week, an honor which is based on votes from undergraduate business students. And we are absolutely delighted that Rand is joining us today. Welcome, Rand.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me here today. I'm really pleased that the University of Minnesota Alumni Association is having these kinds of events because it's a really great opportunity for me to talk about something that I'm really passionate about.
Excellent. Well, we'll get you. Well, I've moved the request to show your screen, and that will come up here in a sec. And take it away. Or wait,
Great.
yeah.
Thanks, John. As you can see from the title of the presentation, Doing Good and Doing Well, Business Ethics and Career Success. What I'd really like to try to do today is talk a little bit more about the human side of the course that I teach, both to the undergrads and graduate students, because I guess one of the things I always tell people is a class like this is really a class about you. It's about your ability to be reflective, to think about the decisions that you make, and to hopefully be a little more intentional about decision making. One of the things that though is, I mean, especially as I've been, you all have probably like me been watching the news and seeing Martin Shkreli, who was the former CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals. He's currently subject to a congressional investigation, and the smirking face of the former hedge fund manager and his sort of disrespectful tweets. And when we think about business ethics, that's one of the things that sort of, I think, for a lot of us pops up in our minds. And there, the idea of business ethics being sometimes even thought of as kind of a joke. So one of the things that I always do, I love to get feedback, and John's helped me out here by creating a poll.
Okay.
A lot of times I start my classes with this question: business ethics is. And so for those of you who are participating online, if this is something that if you want to choose one of these, here are your choices. You can either be say that business ethics is an oxymoron. Everyone knows business and ethics don't mix. Unnecessary because it doesn't lead to competitive advantage. Or common sense, just do the right thing and don't do bad things. Or that final choice, strategic management, organizations can do good and do well. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds here, but if you have the opportunity to click on one of those choices, we'll see what the general mood of the public is.
All right. We'll give a couple more seconds. We got about 70% of people have pulled in. Okay, just one sec.
All right.
All right, there are the results.
Excellent. And this is this is the kind of result that I want to see. Obviously, not choosing the first two. Business and ethics do mix, obviously, and it can very often lead to competitive advantage. I think the real tension is between the last two, and I think we see the distribution here for people who come into my class with a skeptical idea. I don't need to take a class to understand what business ethics is. It's pretty simple. Do the right thing. Don't do the wrong thing. I'm a good person. I treat people well. What is it about this class? Why should I take the time to take this class? And the reason a lot of times we get pushback is because it's a required class, which is a very good thing as a business school to require this. But let's take a look at one point in time. There was a CEO summit at the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University, and they brought in a number of business leaders, and they asked basically the same kind of question. They said to them, let's see if I can. All right, do I have control here? Let's see. All right, I had to figure out the button. All right, so what does ethics mean to you? And some of the responses that were recorded, I think, sort of follow along, but it also helps us to sort of talk through maybe what we have reasons that are can be part of the final decision, but maybe on their own aren't necessarily sufficient. So ethics has to do with what feelings tell me is right and wrong, and we all can agree that gut instinct. Sometimes we call it the smell test. That there's something about our instinctive reaction that we can trust, but we can't always trust it. And we're going to talk in a minute about some research that will give you some renewed awareness of how little that instinct can only take you so far. Ethics has to do with my religious beliefs. Well, of course, most religious traditions, cultural traditions around people of faith who are observant contain a lot of guidelines, rules, help, but religious beliefs can't, especially if we think in a multicultural global environment, we can't just rely on maybe our own religious beliefs. to be sufficient in a global business environment. Being ethical is doing what the law requires. Well, it could certainly be part of it, although history has always shown that, especially in for example, our own constitutional democracy, we've had some laws that maybe we've agreed aren't always ethical, and so we have changed those laws. And so clearly, obeying the law can be part of it, but it can't be all of it. Ethics consists of the standards of behavior our society accepts. This is also can be very important. The idea of looking around, being culturally competent, picking up cues from others about what's appropriate behavior can be very helpful. But we also know that we can't just look to our peers and to see the people around us to get the full picture. One CEO was honest and just said, I don't know what the word means. So it's okay to admit that maybe you don't know everything. I like Deb Rohde's a professor at Stanford Law School, and I really like her description of what the goal of applied ethics is, because that's what we're really trying to do here, is take concepts from ethical traditions and apply them to our day-to-day work. And her definition, she says, it's to define ethical conduct using objective standards and an analysis of benefits, harms, rights, and needs. Objective standards meaning not just your personal opinion, but can you think of how a decision should be made so that if the same situation was encountered by someone else, they might use the same objective principles. And when we think about benefits, harms, rights, and needs, what we really should be saying there is, let's think about the other stakeholders who are affected by our decisions. And maybe those are immediate people who are affected immediately, but oftentimes we see history play this out. Small decisions that affect a very few people over time can have a ripple effect. And what seems like a small decision can really have a huge impact. And so that's the other thing, is we want to reflect on not just what the decision means for us right now, but what does it mean sort of for the greater good of society. Now, I clearly could lecture, and I want this to be a little more interactive. So along the way, as I talk about concepts, I may stop and ask a question or two. You guys have the ability to type in answers, and either John or I along the way, I may be able to see those answers and bring those in as well. But here's really what we're going to try to do today in the time that we have. First, we're going to talk about individual decision making and how we can make better individual decisions. And this is going to come from really an awareness of how imperfect our own decision-making processes can be. And we'll point out a couple of ways that we can be more aware of some of the things that create that environment in which we might be more likely to cheat just a little bit. The second thing is, I'm going to draw on some research done by others, some psychology research to underscore those points. The second is choosing the sector and culture for me. Now, this is really my own anecdotal experience talking to my students, both undergraduate and MBA. I've been teaching part-time for many, many years, and now full-time for the last 3. And when you teach a class like this, you often have people who reach out to you and need to talk to you about this. I'm considering a career change. This is the current environment that I'm in. And so bringing some of that back, and hopefully some of you may have questions or examples that may be helpful for others. But that's going to be a little less science and a little bit more my own personal experience. But in terms of the first one of the things that we need to know about individual decision making is that most individuals are not aware of a human tendency to cheat just a little. There's a sort of an anecdote. I know my father told it to me when I was a kid. Others have said it as well, that there's some people, a few people, who never, ever, ever tell a lie. They will never do anything wrong. There's also a few people who will pretty much cheat and lie and steal no matter what you try to do. Most of us are in the sort of middle group. We think of ourselves as good people, and we tend to think of ourselves as making good decisions, but it can be shown that when you're given the right opportunity, your self-interest to cheat just a little bit, not too much, in certain situations can cause even the person who thinks of themselves as a very good person to cheat just a little bit. And time again we can see that even in the sort of the biggest, think of the Enron collapse, think of WorldCom, a lot of the biggest, most notorious business ethics cases that we've seen all started with just a little cheating, a little misrepresentation of financial returns. It's just a slight accounting fudge. And so one of the things we want to do is be aware of what some of those things are. And so how can you put yourself in a position to cheat less, but to be more aware of your own ethical decision making? So one of the first people that I love to bring in, Dan Ariely, professor at Duke University, formerly at MIT, and he has done a lot of research, but he's the classic sort of public intellectual. He has a column in the Wall Street Journal. He's written several great books. If you just go into Google, he has a wonderful TED Talk about his childhood, sort of the things that have shaped him to be the kind of public intellectual that he is today. And so what he combines is incredibly rigorous research with very easy to understand sort of public knowledge. And so I really like using, I have my students read a chapter from this book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. But one of the number one things that Dan Ariely's research has shown us is that psychological distance is one of the things that creates that opportunity where we might, when we're making a small decision, decide to act in a way that we would call maybe cheating or acting unethically. And so this concept of psychological distance is one that we can be aware of those things in our world, and the more aware we are of those, hopefully we can increase our own ability to police our behavior. Dan Ariely gives some great examples, and one of the examples that he always gives is, if you need a pencil, let's imagine you're at work one day. You need a pencil, you get a call from home, maybe your kid needs a number 2 pencil to fill out a form. A pen won't do, and then nobody can find a pencil. And you can imagine in our modern world where everything's texting and online, that having an adequate number 2 pencil at hand, but you need this for a personal reason. You do not need this for a business reason. So essentially you are going to steal a pencil. Now, which would you be more likely to do? Would you be more likely to walk down the hall to a supply cabinet where nobody's looking and there's like 5,000 pencils and nobody's really going to miss a pencil? Or would you go and literally steal a pencil from a coworker, maybe right in front of you? You can see the impact of what you're doing on an individual. Research has shown that and you could probably think about this yourself, you're going to be much more likely to steal or to take this pencil when you don't see the immediate impact of what you're doing on another person. It's a faceless, nameless supply cabinet. The company becomes less of an immediate personal stakeholder, but you really probably wouldn't steal it from Bob. Here's an actual research example. When Dan Ariely worked at MIT, and he had graduate students, he had his graduate students go out to the residence halls and put in about half of the refrigerators in these common areas, he put a paper plate, and on the paper plate they had 6 $1 bills. Now, in the other refrigerators, he put 6 cans of Coke, and at the time, the cans of Coke were each worth $1. So technically, we were talking about exactly the same value. Dollar bills on a paper plate, cans of Coke. And if you took one of those dollar bills, you could literally walk out into the hall, put the dollar bill into the Coke machine, and get a can of Coke. So he left them there to see what would happen. And after a couple of weeks, they went back. Now, what do you think was left? Was the paper money, dollar bills, the money's just sitting there, was that left, or were the cans of Coke still there? Well, anyone who's ever had a roommate or had put cans of Coke in an office refrigerator knows that the cans of Coke were all gone, but most of the dollar bills remained untouched. So if we think about the first example, that was psychological distance from people. The second example is one that's even more we think about our modern world. The further away we get from money, the idea of stealing a dollar bill is something that immediately triggers our ethical. We say, no, that's stealing. Well, taking a can of Coke from a refrigerator is stealing too. You're taking something that doesn't belong to you, but it's quote unquote just a Coke. But technically, it's exactly the same value. So in this particular example, we show that, this is why we're much less likely. We think about how we handle things like cash. If you've ever sold tickets at your kid's high school football game or anything else, if there's a cash box, people treat it with incredible reverence. They lock the cash. We cash management in any kind of an environment. When I was an attorney one time, I had to do a deposition in northern Minnesota. We were at one of the casinos, and anyone who dealt with cash, there were double keys, there were 2 or 3 people that had, anytime there was a cash transaction, we know that cash is something that we need to be very careful about, and we govern our own behavior around cash differently than if we have something that's worth exactly the same amount of money, but we say it's a Coke or it's a pencil, right? So this is one of the things that sort of opens up for us this idea that, do we think differently about our decisions when we're talking about money or cash versus something that seems more like a commodity. Here's another example, and this one is, so now we certainly know that people are, when given the right opportunity, might cheat just a little bit. One of the things Dan Ariely wanted to figure out was, how can we get people to cheat less? Are there some things we can do? So now you start to think about this, governing your own behavior, or now let's think about even when you have maybe a team or in a workplace environment. And this isn't just, by the way, for-profit. This is any kind of organization, a nonprofit organization, volunteer organization, anytime we're interacting with other people. Are there ways that we can get people to cheat less, or to help them think about what they're doing so that they do cheat less? Here's an example of a test that, so college students in America are among the most psychologically studied group of people, because we can require college students to participate in university in psychology experiments, and so much data has been gathered. But here's what Dan Ariely did. He went to a number of universities, UCLA, schools in North Carolina, schools in New York, and he did this kind of a test. And my little box that you see on the slide here is just sort of my visual depiction. But imagine a very, very long test that has pairs of numbers. And your job is to circle the pairs of numbers that add up to 10. Now what you don't know is that the test is so long that you will never finish. And so once you start, and then it is timed and stop, all you know is, I'm circling the ones that add up to 10. Then at the end, I take my test and I turn it in, and somebody looks at it and checks to see how many I got right, and then I get like a nickel or a quarter or a dollar for each correct answer. So there's a small reward for the percentage that you get correct. Now, Dan Ariely did this test over and over again to hundreds of college students, and what you get after you do it a few times is the average number of correct answers that the average college student would get in that amount of time. Then he made a little second test, and he wanted to see if people would cheat if they had the opportunity to be able to self-report and not have anybody review their test. So this is what he did the second time. He gave out the test to hundreds of students, and then he had the students go right to the back of the room and feed it into a paper shredder so they could see that the test was being shredded. But then they went and reported the number correct and received the money for the percentage that they got correct. Now, what do you think happened? Remember, nobody's looking. There's no evidence. The cheating went up. So let's say that on average, people got 40% of the pairs right. And the second time, the average number reported went up to, say, 50 or 60% correct. Now, there were just a very, very few people who said they got them all right. There were a very, very few people who had pretty much hit the average, right? So that corresponds with our conversation earlier that some people will never cheat. Some people will cheat a whole lot. In the middle, though, most people cheated just a little bit. Their self-interest in getting a little bit more money and knowing that they weren't going to get caught created an opportunity for them to cheat. So now we have 2 sets of data, and of course the second set had no idea that Dan Ariely had done the first set, so now we have 2 sets of data. Now Dan Ariely said, how can we see what we can do to make people cheat less? And so this is the third step, and this actually brought the cheating back down. He reminded people of moral codes. So here's an example. He had people read the 10 Commandments, or he had, even if you're an atheist, he had you swear on a stack of Bibles, or he had people sign and say, I agree to follow the honor code, which is kind of funny because, for example, when he did it at MIT doesn't actually even have an honor code, but people signed it, took the test, shredded the test, reported the number correct, and in the end, the cheating went back down. There was something about reminding people of moral codes, timely reminders that get people to police their behavior just a little bit better. Now, reminders in and of themselves, if they are static, if there's a sign at the train station that says always pay the fare, and the sign never changes, and after a while it sort of blends into the scenery, those aren't the kind of reminders that are going to help. I often tell my students this is, when you say you have to have an ethics code, and you write an ethics code and you print it up and you put it in a beautiful binder and you stick it on the credenza on the back of your desk and never look at it again, that's not going to be an active ethics code that helps to remind you. It has to be a participatory, active reminder, but we know that it can work. So effective, timely reminders of honor codes, of doing the right thing, can in fact start to rein in our sort of human frailty when we're confronted with things like self-interest. A couple other quick experiments. These are the two are pretty much the same. Think about, and it's tax time, and of course now we all do our taxes electronically, but if you're as old as I am, you remember back in the day when you actually would prepare your tax form, and that the very last thing you would do is you would sign your name. I attest that everything that I have put on this tax form is true and correct. Think about how many other forms we have, expense forms, other forms, where you sign at the bottom. One of the tests that he did, and this was it was an experimental, so these were people who knew they were in an experiment, but they were given an expense form where they had to fill out their expenses, and one group was allowed to fill out the expenses and then sign, and the second group signed first. Edge that the information I give is going to be honest and correct, as opposed to I verify the information I just gave you is honest and correct. And if you look at those numbers, if you signed at the bottom, in this particular experiment, you claimed more expenses, which gives us the feeling that maybe you asked for some expenses that you really didn't have, as opposed to signing first and you requested fewer expenses. Now, that led Dan Ariely to talk to the IRS. They said, no, we're not interested in doing a test. He talked to other firms. He said, I want to talk to actual consumers. I want to run a natural experiment where I give a set of things to sign at the top versus a set of things to sign at the bottom. And he finally found an insurance company that agreed to do this. And so what he did was he sent out, this was a letter that would go out, and some of you may remember getting a letter like this in the past from your car insurance company that says, what's your odometer reading? Because as you recall, when you when you get car insurance, it's based on how many miles a year that you drive. And so if you drive more miles, you should pay more in your insurance premiums because you're on the road more, higher risk. But clearly your personal interest is to pay less car insurance. And so the experiment that went out, an insurance company said, okay, we'll send out 20,000 forms where people will do what we always do, which is sign at the bottom. I attest that the odometer reading I'm giving you is true and correct. We'll take another 20,000 and have them sign first and say, I promise that the odometer reading I'm about to give you is true and correct. Well, look at the result. These were the average miles claimed. For the people who signed at the bottom, the average odometer reading was that that person had driven 23,700 miles. But when people signed first, that number is higher, 26,100, which means they might pay a little more. It gives us another example of people might be being a little more honest when they're reminded first. Now, you're looking at this and you're saying, I can't even remember the last time I signed a form. I know that my son graduated from the University of Minnesota 2 years ago, so he is an alum. My daughter is currently a junior here at the University of Minnesota, and if you're a parent like me, you know that for the last 6 or 7 years, I have been filling out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Along at the same time, I've been doing my taxes, and all of these things have gone from paper to now online. I do my taxes online. I do the FAFSA online. And so when you think about that, we really don't pick up a pen anymore and sign. And so it's what Eileen Chow at the University of Virginia has been doing some fascinating research around this whole concept of e-signatures. And so this is an article that just came out at the end of last year, What's in a Name? The Toll E-Signatures Take on Individual Honesty. And Eileen has done a series of experiments very similar to what Dan Ariely has done. She has had people basically roll a dice and tell how many times they rolled a certain pair, or she's given people anagrams where letters are mixed up and you have to figure out the word that can be made. And any of these things, and to have them perform the experiment and then to report how many things they got right, and then either sign it with a physical pen or create an e-signature and sign it that way. One of the things that her research has shown is that people who sign with the e-signature have less personal agency, they feel less invested in it, and are actually likely to cheat more. So think about this from an individual perspective. If you're a manager in a company where things are being done online, people are signing with PIN numbers as opposed to physically signing with a PIN, this psychological distance here now between you and a physical piece of paper, but you're sort of signing, online in the cloud, we know that people are more likely to cheat. One of the things that was kind of funny to me from this article was in one of the anagram experiments, there were 2 or 3 anagrams that had no solution. They were the anagram for nothing. And people claimed that they got them right. So these weren't even ones that you could get right. And some people who signed with the e-signature said that they had solved some of the ones that were unsolvable. So again, one of the challenges that we see. I use this graphic a lot with my students because, we think about back in the day, and of course I didn't live back in medieval times where I carried my pouch with my gold coins, but the value of money was closely associated with the metal the coin was made out of and how heavy it was. That's how you knew how much money you had. You would put the money on a scale, and that's how you knew, and that is really the physical manifestation. John Locke talked about money, currency that came into being because we needed something durable in order to facilitate our commerce in the marketplace. But even the way we think about money, those dollar bills that were on the paper plate are essentially a somewhat derivative. That piece of paper doesn't have the value that a gold coin would have, but we, through mutual consent, agree that dollar bills, currency, but to us it's money. This is, when I talk about money, physical money, this is probably what you were thinking mostly about, is the bills, the dollar bills that we have for U.S. currency. But think about how every time we have a sort of a technical advance, we move further away. So when checks come along and we were writing a check, now you're just writing down a number, $100, and you write it out, $100. Now something that was just a blank piece of paper is now worth $100. Now we've moved obviously now to the credit card world. You're probably like me getting your new chip and pin cards. You swipe the card, and of course, now in the online environment, you've probably got your credit card loaded into Amazon. You know that Amazon knows that you're going to shop very differently when you don't have to find your card and type your number in. If you can just click ship, or if you're like me, you sit up and you're like, well, I only need $5 more for free shipping, so maybe I'll buy a little bit more. Right? The distance, the psychological distance for money, it makes me more likely to buy. Think about now we're at mobile payment. Your phone is not only your personal assistant in your email, your phone is now your wallet. The opportunities for cheating, for not really appreciating what's going on, the amount of hacking that goes on behind the scenes, the opportunities for other people to swoop in. Technology has really created greater both psychological distance from people and psychological distance from money. So I'm going to pop up a graphic here. This is, you see a guy holding a credit card looking at a computer with a big question mark over his head. Back in December of 2013, there was you may remember this, an incredible ticket glitch with Delta Airlines for about 4 or 5 hours. Tickets that would normally run for $1,000, like a first-class airline ticket to Hawaii, would be available for like $80. Tickets that would cost hundreds of dollars, and it wasn't just live for a little bit, it was live for 4 hours. And you can just imagine the travel bloggers, all the Twitterverse just blew up. Everybody was saying, hey, you got to check this out. And people were going on to Delta's. They crashed the website a couple of times, and Delta didn't fix it rapidly. But here were these ticket prices that were obviously wrong. And so, and people bought them. And if you go back and talk to people, and we'll do it, and I've actually got another poll here that I'm going to have John pop up for you. And so let me before you vote, let me just say, think about, you are sitting at your computer, you're at home at night, you're online, and you're on the delta.com. You're not on some hacked website. You can see the little lock in the lower left-hand corner, and there's a ticket, and you pretty much know that it's wrong. A ticket that would cost you $800 is only going to cost you $50. Now, think about it. Would you buy that plane ticket? Now, what? So Matt, don't tell me the answer you want to give me. Tell me the truth. I'm not going to see who you are when you vote, but think about it. And so start voting now. Think about it. If you logged on to Delta.com or United Airlines and saw a ticket that was supposed to be several $100s that you could buy for pennies on the dollar, would you buy the ticket? Yes, look at that. And that 70% lines up almost exactly with National Public Radio. They did the same survey and sent it out to about 20,000 people, and it broke down almost exactly the same way that the people listening to the webinar broke it down. 77% said yes, 18% said no, and 5% said it depends. Now, think about it. It in a sense, you are buying, I don't want to say stealing, but you're getting something for much less value. And so I do this in class. I ask my students, and we sort of talk through the reasoning behind it. And I always think the reasoning is funny, but it makes a difference to people. Number one, that it's an airline. I say, what makes you so confident in your decision making that you would buy something that's obviously the wrong price? They're like, they've been doing it to me for years. It's my turn. I've paid extra baggage fees. It's my turn now. That's one that we hear. The other one we hear is, it's a huge airline. This isn't really going to hurt them. The positive benefit for me is high. The negative benefit for them is very low. Talk to them about the difference between this and maybe actually interacting with a ticket agent, maybe somebody who stands to lose their job for making this mistake. Is it different? And we start to talk about the difference between shopping online with a website versus face-to-face, shopping with a big company that sort of seems nameless and faceless versus walking into, say, a small family-owned store. And if you were in like say, a small family-owned business and you went up to the counter and there was an object that was obviously mispriced, and the person who was ringing you up was the small business owner who was going to take that loss, how much more likely would you be to point out that maybe the price was wrong, or to not argue and say, well, you have to do it because that's what the price says? That separation from the people that you're interacting with, the other stakeholders, and the separation from cash, the fact that you're buying something online. These are the conversations that we have, and I think this shows us that the reality of our modern world, along Eileen Chow's research around e-signatures, the fact that we're moving further and further away from money, the fact that so many of our transactions now are online, where we don't see the impact of what we're doing on others. My undergraduate students this semester, when we talked through this, I'm always impressed with my students, and this time a couple of them said, this is why cyberbullying is so bad, because when you are online and quote unquote anonymous, and you don't feel like you're not going to get caught, and you also you're not seeing the hurt on the other person's face at the time that you say something. Now, all this being said, think about any of you think about in our everyday lives now how intermediated we are from other people through technology, and how different our decisions are when we don't see the people that we're interacting with face to face. One of the cases that I do in my class is about the Bangladesh factory fire, the Tazreen factory fire a few years ago, where garment workers died because in this particular factory the fire safety laws weren't being followed. There were some exits that had been locked, supposedly to keep people from stealing. But when the fire happened and people died, if you start to do the stakeholder analysis and you go back and say, well, why in the world would somebody try to run a factory like that? And then you realize that the reason that these factories are so competitive with each other to try to deliver the cheapest prices is because as Western consumers, we are pushing Walmart and Target and H&M to deliver goods at the cheapest possible price. And yet when something like that happens, those people are halfway around the world at the other end of a very long supply chain. And so if we don't think about it, if we don't see it, if we aren't reminded of the impact of our actions on others, there may be times when the fact that we demand cheap consumer goods fuels a series of decisions. And this is when I talked in the beginning about sometimes the small decisions we make have a ripple effect. So I think one of the things that hopefully this part of the presentation has done is to say, how mindful are you of the other people that are impacted by your decisions, and how often are you now relying on technology. It may be the case, and I think the evidence shows that the better we are at realizing who some of the other stakeholders we are and how technology is affecting us, really can help us to be better judges of for decision making. If we're aware of the psychological distance between us and other people that makes it more likely that we cheat just a little, maybe we can do a better job of monitoring our behavior. And also to think about those conflicts of interest. I mean, we all have them. Conflict of interest sounds like a bad thing, but we all have them. We all have conflicts that pull us away from our attention at work. We have family issues, money issues, health issues, sometimes even professional ambition that might color our decision making. And so being aware of not only psychological distance, but also the self-interest that we have in pretty much all transactions. And that can help us make better individual decisions. Now, the second part of the presentation here is it's not quite so in-depth, and again, this is my own, based on my own conversations with students and others about what steps can I take to be more ethical in terms of choosing the right sector and culture. One of the things that I think, and research has shown this, but I also have found this just talking to my students, that a lot of us have kind of a default approach to ethical. It's something that works for us in terms of how we get through the day. And this is the internal. This is when we're not aware of it. Sometimes most people, in fact, I think statistically has been shown, really think about decisions about sort of along the lines of the greatest good for the greatest number. Imagine, you've got a bunch of kids and you want to go out to, take them out to dinner, and somebody wants burgers and somebody wants pizza, and you figure out most people want burgers, so we're going to go there, and the two people who wanted pizza, well, you're still getting dinner. We're going to keep the greatest number of people happy. Or even in our participatory democracy, if we say, a certain percentage of people, the majority have voted, we'll say, okay, then that's the right thing. So we tend to have a very utilitarian model for a lot of the decisions that we make, just sort of day to day. But some people are more focused on rules, procedures, doing the right thing for the right reason, as opposed to just looking at the consequences. Others are tightly connected with other people in terms of personal relationships. And so those rational, whether you're talking about rules or utility, some people are much more comfortable humanizing and thinking about the impact on individual people. The utilitarian analysis that I just described, right? If you can put it into numbers, if you can put it on a spreadsheet, and that gives you comfort, that might be your default. If those of you who are looking at this now and you're like, yeah, SWOT analysis and a chart, I can put it in a spreadsheet. I'm comfortable with that. That makes me feel like I'm making good decisions. Some of you may be more focused on individual rights, civil rights, the right to clean water. Think about what's going on in Flint, Michigan right now. Constitutional rights, or even privacy rights. That there are some things that even if the greater good can be achieved, we say there are some lines that we can't cross. And for some people, that is a sort of their inner moral compass is more aligned with that approach. Justice and fairness is much more messy, balanced. We can look at all the stakeholders, and instead of picking winners and losers, we're going to try to spread out the benefits and the burdens among the group to help come up with what we think is a fair example, reasonable accommodation for disability, for example, fair trade for coffee, even anything in the legal system, right? The due process, access to the legal system, fairness, etc. Some folks, this is at the core of how they make personal decisions in their lives, and when they see the world, they see it through this lens. The final sort of frame, and this is becoming, it's not that this is new because this has always been there, but it's taken feminist scholars like Carol Gilligan and others to really give voice to the fact that personal relationships really do matter. And the web of connectivity between individuals, there are going to be times when you are going to make a decision based upon your personal relationship that is it doesn't even make any sense rationally. Think about maybe a long-term employee who has used up all of his sick leave, but needs more time. It would be completely within the rights of the company in terms of the law to either terminate this employee or to cut off the benefits, but because of the long-term relationship, a decision is made to keep this person on benefits for a little bit longer. Or think about any time when you think about, would you treat your own child, with something happening to your own child, would you treat a situation differently than another unrelated child or person? And so some folks, this is the lens that's meaningful to them. Now, the reason I give you this is not that we're going to sit down now and break it down. I think there's a strong relationship, and again, this is based on conversations with students, between those frames of analysis and the kind of environment that you can feel comfortable working in. Not that you're going to be asked to do anything unethical, but there are times when certain sectors, certain kinds of jobs either connect with your sort of internal frame or have dissonance. And one of the things that we know from research is that when you have fatigue in the workplace, cognitive fatigue, when you are stressed, when you are uncomfortable, your own internal ability to continue to do things sort of following the rules, doing things the right way, erodes. So just like before when we talked about psychological distance, creating this opportunity, if you are fatigued, there's one study I laugh with my students that says people are more likely to make late in the day to cheat on financial matters than they are early in the day. And I said, clearly you can't have a business where you say, okay, the only financial transactions we're going to do are before noon, and after noon nobody can sign any purchase orders. I mean, we can't do that. But what we can do is be aware of it. So what I've got here is I've got 4 pictures of what I have sort of considered sort of 4 different sort of areas where people might work. And hopefully I'll get through this pretty quickly so we can open it up for questions. But the first one goes along with that sort of utilitarian frame that I was talking about before. Are you most comfortable in a competitive, performance-driven environment? If your default frame is along the lines of outcomes and consequences, greatest good for the greatest number, you're going to define your success by winning through competition. Now, I'm not saying unethically, but just that you are focused on competing with others, rational self-interest in a marketplace. You have little patience for long meetings, complex negotiations, rules, bureaucracy, right? You want to be in the pit. You want to be out in the field, sales, trading, marketing. You can look at your deck at the end of the day, your dashboard, and say, okay, did I make the calls I wanted to make? Am I achieving the right yield in terms of my leads? This is the kind of frame. Now, if you're not wired like this, but you're in a job like this, it's my opinion, and I've heard people say to me that people feel like they just can't, they're not comfortable, they're not happy, and I think this frame of deciding sort of the right way to live your life, the right thing to do, can really, if you're not comfortable in this environment, it may be because this is the difference. Let's look at a couple of other examples to think about. Are you most comfortable in an orderly, highly regulated environment? So this is a picture of somebody doing an audit on a particular piece of industrial machinery here. If your default ethical frame, if you're most comfortable with rules, intent, compliance, you define success not by competition with others and achieving high-level goals, but by carefully following detailed procedures. Think the end never justifies the means. You don't deviate from policy because you know that the rules are there for a very important reason. You have very little patience for those people who sort of make it up as they go. Let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. What do we got to lose? Let's try it. If you feel very uncomfortable with people like that, you may be more comfortable in this kind of an environment: auditing, compliance, risk management, assessment, where you're following very detailed procedures. Are you the kind of person who's most comfortable in an environment of procedure and negotiation? Now, if your default frame is driven by fairness, justice, and due process, you may be much more comfortable in a place where success is defined by ensuring that all voices are heard, right? There are no clean solutions. If everyone has to compromise and we have to work through this messy process, you have little patience for shortcuts or results that unfairly burden stakeholders. You might be better served finding a career in law, social work, higher education, public policy, where you're working with large groups of stakeholders and everybody can't be happy, but you can work it out through time and effort. The final frame is when we talked about caring for others. If your default ethical frame is driven by mission, service, and empathy, you may say that success is defined by helping people address pressing social issues. You're much more about cooperation and collaboration instead of competition. When people come to you and say, we're going to run this like a business, that focus on the bottom line frustrates you because you're more concerned about coming up with a solution that addresses needs. You may find that a career in a mission-driven, not-for-profit organization might be the best fit for you. And these are the reason that I give you these frames is to say, I think that the fatigue and the stress that can be caused by having one sort of lens or approach that's most comfortable to you and putting it in another environment not only can make you uncomfortable, but at times might make you more prone to taking a shortcut, cheating a little bit, filling out a form that you know, if you're a competitive person and you're tired of all this compliance stuff, you might just not do the things that you need to do. And we really need to think about how the sector and the culture fits with you. So be aware of how your frame affects your feelings about daily work, and think about that extra energy you expend rationalizing and justifying the career. Because, you know, if you look at the bottom and say, well, I got to do this because I got to make the money, you know, you are paying, my friend, for the fatigue and the dissonance that's caused by being in a situation that's not a good fit. Now, doesn't mean you got to quit your job. I think that there are times, especially within larger employers, where you may be able to find a different role. If you're in an external-facing role and you're not comfortable with that, you may find that there's an internal, more compliance role that's available for you. But being aware of this might help you to make a better decision about what the next step is for you in your career. And again, this is based on what I've heard from my students as they've talked to me and reached out to me and said, can we talk a little bit about, you know, how what we've talked about in class fits in with my job. So there's about 9 minutes left here, and I've got the question pane up I can see, and if John can answer if there's any questions about or any examples. Have any of you had a situation where you've seen or encountered maybe this in your own career search, where the place that where you're working doesn't really harmonize with what you are, the way you see the world? So I've sort of opened this up.
Yeah, definitely. And if folks have any questions, feel free to type them in the question pane right now. Rand, as you think about your classroom and you're talking as far as like your interactions, let's say with undergraduate students, is there anything that kind of surprises you about you know, how they view these topics, either or good or bad, or anything that's just surprised you from those classroom conversations?
You know, I think the thing that I find most interesting is that the students are very, very interested, especially the first year class that I teach at Carlson, in these issues. They talk to me after class. They think it's very powerful. But one of the things that that I've noticed is that when I talk to them as they're graduating seniors and we're talking about where they're going to work, and I say, well, does say for example, the corporate social responsibility or whatever of this particular company line you're looking for, it seems to matter a little bit less. When it's time to actually get a job, the students are more focused on, you know, what's the salary and what am I going to be doing. So I don't think it's not important, but I think that it's when it's more abstract, the questions are easier, and then when we get to be more specific, it's a little bit more complicated. So I'm seeing a couple of questions here. The first one: how best to approach supervisors with ethical concerns, especially gray area issues? This is a really good question because you know, one of the things we talk about in my class is, you know, what if you don't have a lot of power in your organization? What if you don't want to be seen as a troublemaker? You know, we know that there are whistleblower protections, but at the same time, you know, you know that there are times when sometimes people don't want to get bad news. The one thing I would say is the best advice I ever got from one of my bosses was, if you've got bad news, tell me fast. And I think that's the thing that maybe makes it, and then it's more about the organization and less about your personal, because if you see something that you think is a gray area or that you think is a problem, if you go to your supervisor and say, this is something that I've noticed and I think, you know, this could really be a problem over the long term. And then you also, you know, if you've thought about it, a potential kind of solution that you know, if there's a maybe there's a purchase order process, or there's you know that there are people who maybe are taking sick, taking time off and they're not claiming the time off or whatever. That what are there some ways that we can do again to maybe close that psychological distance to make things a little more transparent. I see another question here. I think ethical concerns are much easier to see in the actions of others. How can we raise the bar in an organization, or should we just turn away or change organizations? It totally depends on the organization. I know that there are some companies, some organizations that are very open to this, but I've told students, I've had a couple of face-to-face student conversations, one-on-ones with students where I've said, you at some point you have to know where there's that line where you might just have to walk away, because if you are in an organization that is intent on going in a certain direction, and you're the only one who seems to feel that way, it might be the case that you need to do something different. Another question here, what's the thought on the word transparency? Lots of talk, not much truth to it. Yeah, one of the challenges in business ethics that all the time is this, sometimes it's called greenwashing. Sometimes, the using buzzwords. I think Stims and Brinkman, one of the articles that I have my students read, talk about what's called window dressing ethics, which is, and Enron was a great example. Enron, believe it or not, was voted one of the most ethical companies in America before it completely collapsed. And one of the reasons was they had an incredible ethics policy. The board was supposed to approve any kind of self-dealing. The board of directors was supposedly approving all the things. Everything about Enron on paper looked great. They had a code of ethics. They had a great board. They had processes that were defensible. But the reality was it was all a sham. And so I guess for me, you have to match up sort of the actions with the language. And just if a company says, hey, look at our website, look at all the great things that we're doing, you can't stop there, especially if it's a company that's a place where you want to work, or other things. That transparency is sort of, if it's used as just an empty word, I think you're right. It's not going to be the kind of thing that it doesn't mean anything in and of itself without action that goes along with it. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Rand, so much for taking time out of your day, and I know you lead a very busy teaching schedule, to share your insights and expertise with our online audience today. I really appreciate everything you brought to the webinar today.
Thank you so much, John. And I hope maybe for the folks who are listening that some of this was useful. Like I said, this is my passion. It's something that I'm really happy that I'm able to do, and really happy to be here at the University of Minnesota. I know that ethics and thinking about good decision making is across a number. It's not just in the Carlson School. It's across the university. We have a lot of people here who are looking into these areas, and so it's great to have this opportunity as well, and I wish all of you who are listening on the webinar today the best of luck in your career, and maybe hopefully some of the information we talked about today is helpful for you.
Thank you again, Rand. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right, everybody. That concludes another webinar for today. Again, visit our website, minnesotaalumni.org/webinars, and we have some future ones coming up. And if you're also on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, we have a 30,000 person plus LinkedIn group. Definitely join in with us as well. And in closing, members of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association make initiatives like this webinar series possible. Thank you so much for your support. Because of members, we can enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. Encourage anybody who's interested to become a member at minnesotalumni.org/join. That wraps up today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us and being an active member of our worldwide community of over 455,000 alumni worldwide. And thanks to all the alumni and friends who joined us today. Have a great day.